social media is not reality. And when you see all these people talking about, their work-life balance, the grind set, you got to work I haven't slept in 3 days. I'm up, trading shitcoin.
Doing
whatever it
ice
is,
bath
right?
At 4 a.m.
Yeah, ice bath at 4 a.m. All that kind of crap, right? You just need to take that with a grain of salt and just know that they're probably lying.
We're all part of this whole money game. This whole...
Welcome back to another episode of Beers and Business. I'm Abe Dearmer, CEO of Appsembler.
I'm Andrew Martin, CEO of Teamgate CRM, and we're back. I don't even know what episode. What is it, 20? 23?
23.
23.
Here
Michael
we are.
Jordan.
Michael Jordan.
Let's go.
The man. Should have had man, why the hell did we not do an episode about Michael Jordan and what you can learn from him?
There you go. We should, yeah. Well,
Missed opportunity.
When there's key numbers, we can do.
Yeah. Who was famous? Who is associated with number 24?
24. That'd be probably your rugby jersey, wouldn't it?
Listen to it. He's got jokes today, does he? Settle down. What's been going on, mate? Sorry, episode breakdown. Here we go. So go through our normal weekly wrap up as the first bit, and then today we're going to talk about work-life balance. So getting into summer in Australia, going into winter in the US, northern southern hemisphere, it's important that we start to understand a bit more about work-life balance. It's funny, you see there's numerous TikTok reels about people on summer holidays but still on the phone, not being able to switch off. So we thought it'd be, coming into summer in Australia, good to talk a bit about work-life balance. We'll talk about some common challenges that people face trying to achieve that work-life balances, talk about some practical strategies that people can employ, bust some myths surrounding the work-life balance component. And another reason it's also pretty pertinent is the right to disconnect laws that have recently come out in Australia and became law, right? Really interesting. Some firms have come out and said, if someone ignores my call, I'm just going to fire them. It's fine. Whereas other people have come out and said, I support the right to disconnect, and it'll be fine. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out and whether, who's the first workplace that's going to get persecuted with not following the right to disconnect law. That would be a really interesting
military
case.
For sure. I wonder if there's any.
I think they're exempt.
Yeah, they'd have to be.
There's a number of other things that they're exempt from. I think they're also exempt from the right to disconnect law. I could be wrong though, but it definitely isn't a thing that would go with Army. So how's the week been, Andrew?
Yeah, it's been good. I've still got a cough, as you can hear. So the good
old
influenza. Good old influenza turned into a bit of pneumonia in my left lung, which was, of course, fun to play rugby with last weekend. The mighty Biwa Bulldogs got a win, so we're straight into the grand final. So next weekend we'll be playing in the grand final, which is good. And then otherwise, the week's been pretty good. Getting back into the groove. We've had a lot of really good prospects coming through, so a lot of onboarding and getting some accounts set up. So we should be seeing a good influx of new revenue this week as we close out three of those accounts. So on the business side, I don't know whether it's an indication, but it seems as though some people are starting to open the wallets back up a little bit more. But I won't get ahead of myself too soon. But yeah, not too bad. Obviously, there's
a couple of Australian companies in there too, right?
Yeah, 2 Aussie companies and one a really big US company. So the biggest US client we've signed to date, and then two Aussie companies. So one who works with a lot of rural farmers building out shearing sheds, and then another diamond dealer. So might get some discounts moving forward.
Nice.
Don't tell the wife.
Yeah, exactly. She'll be booking it up, mate.
Yeah, for sure. And then quick shout out, obviously, it was my wife's birthday this week on Tuesday. We spent it by me going to rugby training, and then Thursday was my son's 3rd birthday, and Thursday night I was again at rugby training. But rest assured, next Sunday is my wedding anniversary, which is
and
also
you'll be playing rugby.
The grand final day. We've got plenty.
What better way for her to celebrate your wedding anniversary? Charlotte would be dirty on that too.
I was at football training, and there was a handful of guys that weren't there, and I was just looking at my coach going, mate, I was here Tuesday. It was my wife's birthday. I'm here tonight. It's my son's birthday, and grand final is our wedding anniversary. Like, what are you trying to do to me? You're killing me here.
Yeah, because he makes a schedule.
Anyway, how's your week been?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Launching new homepage by end of this week, which would be good to see the results
Looks
of that.
good. Looks good.
Taking some learnings from some of the tests that we've been doing, putting them into the homepage design, which would be good to see how they go. I'm really excited to see this new homepage and how it all works. Then the other side of that as well, our free trial experience is launched, got the emails done with that, which is always exciting. And also starting to do a bit of a push around customer success, which is good. So doing a lot of discussions, reaching out there and upgrading our Tahoe platform to OpenNetX Redwood, which is pretty exciting. So that opens up a lot of features, brings us into a lot more currency, which is really exciting. So looking forward to getting that all done. But busy week, lots going on. I would say that this week after Labor Day has been a flurry of activity, and I think it's just going to pick up.
Yeah.
After that, with a lot of the US people now, it's like holiday season's over, people come back, recharge,
I think
new initiatives,
I said that to you
new
this
jobs.
week as well. I said I think yesterday was the busiest day I've ever had since I moved into this world. Like, it was just crazy busy. So yeah, hopefully a sign of things to come for both of us. And for the listeners out there, go and check out the AppSembler website. If you might get a chance to see the
Next
old
week.
website. Yeah. But check it out now, and then come back next week when Abe launches his new website and check out the differences and give him a little traffic boost to help with his SEO.
Yeah, get on there, click around, go and check some stuff out.
Yeah.
Be good to go. Visit more than one page. All right. And busy week, lots going on. What's your learning?
Yeah, learning of the week. So you and I are pretty cheap, right? So we often use cheaper alternatives when we're using, products and tech stacks in our own day-to-day business. So obviously, a lot of people.
I like the word frugal. Frugal is a better word. We're not cheap. We're frugal, mate.
And so for example, we use like Grain, right? Grain is a chorus alternative, probably 1/10 of the price.
Great
Grain. Product, right? Great product.
If you're not using
I've also
Grain
learned
and using
this week,
chorus,
though,
switch to Grain.
But I have learned this week that sometimes the more expensive tool is the better option, and it'll save you a lot of time and effort. So not always.
Stop that.
That's the importance
Don't you
of
dare say
going.
That.
That's the importance of going and testing the products, right? So if you're looking at Grain, go and test it and make sure it's got all, if you're an in-depth user of Chorus and you're using, hectic features on there that may not be on Grain, go and test both and make sure. But if you're a basic user, there's no reason you can't go to Grain. But yeah, this week I've had a client who uses a cheaper alternative for like a booking system. So Calendly, we use Calendly, right? So it's a very cheap version of Calendly. And I've been trying to build out an integration with them for Teamgate to help the client book, when they get a booking on their website, push it into the CRM. And oh my God, it's taken me like 6 hours nonstop of trying to build this thing out. And
the key is it's taking
roadblock after roadblock. I know Zapier inside out, mate. Would have taken me 2 minutes to do with another tool. That's
what I mean. The person who's using this tool doesn't care, right?
I know, but I've given them feedback. I've actually also given the CEO of the cheaper alternative some feedback as well, and say, hey, look, we've done it for this client, but in the future, if you don't improve, your Zapier integration, we're probably going to recommend that they make a switch to something else because the user experience was horrendous. So yeah, that's my learning of the week. Some cheaper tools are worth it, i.e. Teamgate versus Salesforce. Always go with Teamgate. But
top value for money CRM. And you also got some exciting news from G2 as well.
Yeah, we've been named again as a high performer for CRM as well as CRM for small business for what is it, fall in the US? Fall 2024. We've also placed pretty high in the grid report for sales enablement tools. And then we've also received some awards for best implementation, best relationships with small business, and easiest to do business with. Again, on the right track. And
now you just need to pay G2 a shitload of money so you can put them up.
Yeah, they of course want you. They say, hey, congrats on all your awards. If you want to use this for marketing material, pay us some money and we'll give you the badges. But I never pay up. I just use them anyway.
Never say that. Allegedly. Yeah, my learning of the week is Webflow. So for those who want to create a website, Webflow is a easy to use, pretty cool tool start using. I'm just amazed now about how far we've come in making things easier to use for people, that someone who's as non-tech as myself can create a pretty professional looking website utilizing a tool like Webflow.
It's
yeah,
like drag and drop. There's templates on there.
Perfect. Templates, everything like that. But the thing I like about it, I feel like Square is too restrictive in its drag and drop. So it doesn't allow you enough customization. Whereas Webflow allows you to use a template and keep it basic, but also allows you to increase that customization a little bit as well, which I think is really cool. So for me, I found a new tool, Webflow, love it. Really good to use, great for creating websites. And their pricing is really confusing though. It comes across as really cheap, but you actually have to like bundle a few things in. So it's not as cheap as it looks to begin with. But it's still a great tool, pretty comparable to Shopify, Square, and Wix as far as pricing, but still, yeah, really cool tool to use.
Yeah, and like the pricing's a little bit confusing, but I think it's still on par with, or even cheaper than some of those alternatives.
Yeah, I think it's on par.
So,
I think they're about the same.
Yeah, I think they'll be about the same. But yeah, it looks good. Be interesting to see the integration piece for them. I haven't really checked it out. I only mentioned that because Squarespace, I recently found out are very limited. Very limited.
They want you to use Square. They want you to keep you in the ecosystem.
Yeah, they won't keep you in there. So we've got a customer at the moment we're trying to integrate, which is pretty difficult. But moving on, what do you got for your quote of the week?
Yeah, so Alex Hormozi, a few of you may know him. He now runs Acquire.com, which I only really found out recently, which is super interesting. So for those who don't know, Acquire.com is essentially a marketplace for businesses, used a lot for software businesses, but for people who want to do micro investing or own a company, he has a great website there that is created. But he actually made his fortune in building gyms, which is pretty cool. So a focused fool can accomplish more than a distracted genius. And so this, I think, is like, it's really interesting when you see someone who's fanatical about what they're doing, their goals, they know what they're doing, they stay on the path, they can achieve anything, whereas someone who easily, goes off with the butterflies will just end up, treading water and getting nowhere. It sort of links into work-life balance, but more about, setting yourself goals and outcomes that you want to achieve. Sticking to those and not getting distracted, I think, is a really key element. So I like that. A focused fool can accomplish more than a distracted genius.
Yeah, I like it as well. And I think it ties in. It does tie in well when we get to, I guess, what work-life balance is. And, it's not just a balance of time, 40 hours work, 40 hours play. It's more your quantity and your quality, and prioritizing whilst you're doing one or the other.
Yes.
Mine is, someone's trying to ring me on Slack. Ignore that, James. My quote of the week is, you'll never find time for anything. If you want time, you must make it. And it's by Charles Buxton, and probably none of you will know who he is. He's from the 1800s. He was a parliament member in the UK. I think he was also he also had a brewery and a few other things. But yeah, this one ties in directly about what we're going to talk about today. If you're finding yourself saying a lot of the time, I don't have time for that, or if let's say you have a hobby and if it's rugby and I don't have time to play rugby anymore, you're never going to find the time to do it. You have to make it. And as we go through and discuss certain things today, I think having boundaries and using certain techniques, you actually create time for those hobbies, because when you're at work, and you become that focused fool. You become, that, for the next 4 hour block, I'm all in, and then I've got, time with the kids or something like that. If you didn't have that, it's like, do you need to get everything done in the 4 hours because you're probably going to jump back on your computer at 6 p.m. or you're going to do something else later and you're not as focused. So you let that stuff drag out. So, that's my quote of the week. And I've just realized, Abe, we've again made a little error. What are you drinking?
I've got another Zigzag. Actually, I think this might be the same one. It is actually.
It looks the same one. It looks the same.
It's the Pale Ale again. It's still as good as last time. The Steam Pale Ale, Zigzag Brewery. I've managed to pick up the same one. Do we need to recap what it is?
No, I think we just skip this entire segment because today, as I am on some very heavy antibiotics for my pneumonia, I am drinking coffee, which is probably worse than beer, to be fair. But
Not for you,
I don't think
pneumonia. It's not.
I don't think I'm meant to be drinking beer with heavy antibiotics. So that's
Just go find yourself a 2-strain and drink beer, mate, and you'll get a full buzz on.
Yeah, I'll be hammered.
It's good. You'll pass
may
out.
have done that when I was younger, but
No, I mean, who hasn't once or twice, you know?
Mature man now. I wouldn't do that.
Look at you,
All right,
go, mate. Look at you.
Should we jump in to work-life balance? I think a good primer is how this topic came about, and I think you and I found it, and I might have sent it to you on Instagram, was let's call her an influencer on TikTok or Instagram, who is now selling courses for burnout, and her video was her
It did not reach the audience she expected it to reach.
Explaining that she was a doctor who experienced massive burnout and quit being a doctor, and now she's learned how to manage her burnout. And
No. She hasn't learned how to manage her burnout.
Now she's selling courses to teach people how to manage burnout.
Her burnout, like, she still hasn't managed that. That's still messed up.
Yeah.
But she's at least able to educate other people how to manage something that she hasn't managed.
Just quit.
Yeah, like, and this is a stupid thing, right? And we'll bring it up a couple of times in here as well. Is that social media is not reality, and when you see all these people talking about, you know, their work-life balance, the grind set, you know, you got to work for. I haven't slept in 3 days. I'm up, you know, trading shitcoin,
doing
whatever it is, right?
At 4 a.m.
Yeah, ice bath at 4 a.m. All that kind of crap, right? You just need to take that with a grain of salt and just know that they're probably lying, and when they switch the camera off, they're doing something different. Or they didn't do that to get successful, and now they have money. They're just like, sweet, I'm going to tell people this new fad that I found, right? It's the same with this chick.
Build a new revenue stream.
Where she's like, avoid burnout. You know, being very open and honest is cool, okay? Be open and honest about it, but you didn't solve any of your problems. The problems are still there. You still haven't worked out how to manage burnout.
You quit.
You just quit. You just went, this is too much. See you later. You didn't find a way to work through it. You didn't find a way to manage it. And I think there's nothing wrong with working hard, and there's nothing wrong with putting in the work, because sometimes you need to, but you need to also figure out how you recharge your batteries. And that's the most important thing, is you need to figure out the time and the place for you to recharge your batteries. And I think that comes into like the first point we start talking about work-life balance, is that work-life balance, as Andrew said, you know, doesn't mean you work X number of hours, then you take a break, etc., etc. That's not really the way it is. It's about figuring out how you can fit quality moments or the things that are going to recharge your battery into your life that allow you to keep going. So it's not about, you know, equal hours, things like that. Like, yeah, time off helps to rejuvenate you, sure, but it's not a long-term strategy, because you can only take, like, if you're an employee, you can only take so much time off before, you know, you've used all your leave balance that you've got. If you're an owner, you can only take so much time off before it becomes detrimental to your business. And so I'd almost argue that as an owner, you get less ability to take your allocated time off because you're too busy running a business. So what I would say is that you just need to figure out how you recharge your battery. So when I think work-life balance, I'd encourage people not to think of it as I need X amount of hours off during the day. It's more about the case of how am I doing the things that recharge my battery, either throughout the day or at the end of the day. And Andrew and I can give some of the ways that we do it as well, like how we recharge the battery or reset ourselves. But I think that's an important thing to talk about and to get out there, is that it's not so much about how many hours in a day, it's more about the quality of those hours and how you spend them.
Yeah, and I don't think there's nothing wrong with having or experiencing burnout at some stage. Like it's sometimes it's just unavoidable. It's happened, you know, you and I have some pretty good things in place. I've still experienced burnout this year. It's about understanding those triggers and knowing, all right, I'm starting to burn out, and then going and saying, you know, this is the way that I'm going to recharge my battery, and understanding what's going to recharge your battery and move it. But like you said, being a CEO of a company, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to take as much leave or get away from work as much as you can. But if you've got the right things in place, sometimes you don't need to. Like you and I guarantee if you opened your leave balance right now, you would have exorbitant amounts of leave. I have the same, because you get to a point where if you've got the balance in place, you almost feel like you don't need leave because you've got that work. Like there's points where I'll go through the year 6 months at a time and I haven't taken a day off, and I don't feel like I'm not going, oh, I really need to take a week off, or I really need to, schedule a holiday with the fit. Like,
yeah, I don't understand those people who are like, oh, I need to take a couple of days off, next week so I can recharge. And it's like, man, like, I just don't get it.
You're going to come back to more work sometimes. Like yeah. And also, what do you got to do? Like, I'd just be at home bored anyway. So if you've got that balance in place, you've got that focus, you push through work, and then you switch off, or you have that barrier in place, which, like you said, the new laws in place are meant to help that. But, regardless of your workplace, if you're the CEO, you should be demonstrating this. And if you can't demonstrate it and you can't put work-life balance in, you can't then push it down onto your employees and say, hey, you need to be, avoiding burnout because you're working too hard. Like, you as a leader need to show it off. And then that's going to build that culture around it's okay to, you did it for me, Abe. When I first started working for you, and we say the same thing when someone comes on board with Xenon, you can't get everything done in a day in the job that we're in. There's too much. Your to-do list is actually going to get bigger from day to day. Accept it straight away. Accept that you can't do everything in an 8-hour period or whatever your work schedule is. So prioritize it, get what you can get done, but then also use your calendar, and we're probably getting ahead of ourselves, but block out time for things like dropping your kids at school. Like, that's a small thing that you can do each day to break up the monotony of working and actually bring some sort of balance into your workday.
Yeah, which I think leads pretty well into the next segment that we're going to talk about, which is, some of the challenges that are faced by, I know we originally had this as CEOs and business owners, but I also think it's like managers and things like that. And it also, I think anyone who, God, no matter what job you're doing, you probably feel this at some stage. It just varies in degrees, right? And, depending on what pond you're in, it varies. Like, someone who's managing a multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar corporation probably has, far bigger things on their plate than someone who's just come out of university and is now working in their first job. That's going to happen. But what I would say is that, relatively speaking, with the experience and what you've been conditioned to, it could feel overwhelming. And so I think that's an important thing as well. Is like, just because you're first starting out, it doesn't mean that this stuff isn't relevant. Just because you see yourself as not being in a high profile job, high pressure environment, all this stuff still remains relevant. And I think a lot of people cop flack because they're like, oh, I'm feeling pressure. And it's like, how could you feel pressured in a data entry role or something like that? And it's like, well, it's relative.
Yeah. It's a new environment, new role. And I think whether you're a $1 billion CEO or a CEO of a small business, you're going to be wearing multiple hats, and that responsibility is going to be higher. That workload is going to be higher. And regardless of where you're at, even if you're a junior leader or you're the first time employee, you're going to have different stresses. So it's just understanding what they are, getting the tools in place to sort of overcome that. But another challenge is, and this relates to the law, right, is the pressure to always be available. And this is something I was terrible with when I first started with Teamgate and with Xenon, is having the apps on your phone. So having Slack, having your email,
especially because of the hours
emails.
we work.
Yeah, especially across different time zones.
Because Eastern US time, and if you're working with European companies, your people can start coming online from like 4 p.m. And so you've just finished work from starting at 4 a.m. and then suddenly you're getting harassed by people over in Europe and in the US, and you're like, when does it stop?
Yeah. And I was, I'd look at my phone, I'd see a message in Slack, I'd go, oh, that's important. I'd go to my office, jump on the computer, and then before you know it, you're on your computer for an hour when you should be probably downstairs with your family or doing stuff like that. So a big thing for me was
you're still sitting there with your family, and you're on Slack on your phone, and you
even worse, and then your wife's just death staring you. Does stare at me. So I think a big thing to put in place, and we're kind of blurring the next segment into this. But
I think let's looking at the flow. I know we plan on talking about, but let's just talk about some of the strategies. So we can bring up. So when we talk about overwhelming workload and responsibility, I mentioned that it changes depending on where you are in your career, your experiences, things like that. The biggest way that I've found is that whenever I feel like, oh, man, I've just got like so much to do, and you feel the pressure and you feel to yourself like, how am I going to do all of this stuff in the time I've allocated? And this goes back to my quote from when we look at Alex, where he says, a focused fool can accomplish more than a distracted genius. And so when I look at this, I think if you're feeling overwhelmed and you feel like there's too much to do, probably the reason why is because you don't have a plan and everything's just jumbled up. And so what I would say is just make a list. And I know, Andrew, you keep a list in like a notes where you just arrange them in priority and just work on the next one. The Eisenhower matrix I found was a really, really good tool to help me sort of plan and strategize about what tasks I'm going to get completed. But it's also like OKRs and goals for the year, for the quarter, for the month, whatever time period you need to set them, and just say like, hey, I'm going to set a goal that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z by the end of the month. And then you have a plan. And if you think about, I'm going to go do this, and it's like, oh, but does it actually go towards achieving the goal of X, Y, and Z? It doesn't? I'm not going to do it. And then you just focus on the goal. And what you'll find is that overwhelming workload suddenly seems so much less because now you've got a plan. Now you know, like, okay, as long as I get task Z done today, that's all that matters. You come in, you do the task, and you might finish it early and go, oh, God, I've just accomplished something. Instead of jumping between 4 different things during the day.
And Shreya spoke about this a couple of episodes ago, right, where she sort of had a daily focus. And she had that main priority task, and if she had time to do anything else, that was a bonus. But you and I, we use we use our calendar pretty effectively. I think to have daily focuses with your calendar. Obviously, you can create tasks in your calendar for those larger projects. If you've got OKRs and goals, for example, for me, for a quarter, I want to increase my presence on Reddit. So engaging on Reddit, just block out 30 minutes each morning to go towards that goal, right? Jump on Reddit, like put it in your calendar so that time's blocked out. And the pressure to always be available that we spoke about. I think a really good one here that I implemented earlier in the year was we use Slack every day. That's sort of our internal team communication thing. So getting all those apps off your phone and then having a completely separate app, which serves the purpose of like a bat phone, right? So if there's an emergency, I have WhatsApp on my phone. We have a company group on WhatsApp that has all the employees, and we only use that for emergencies. So if I'm offline, completely disconnected after my work hours, but there is something that I actually need to be called for or need to be at my computer for, that's what WhatsApp is for. It's not for anything else. It's not, hey, can you check your email? It's, hey, we've got a server down, or, we've got this massive issue. You need to jump online. And then I go and jump online. Outside of that, I'm off my computer. I'm not touching anything work related outside of my work hours. So I think that's a really effective one. And I think you've done something similar in the past as well.
Yeah. And I mean, different workplaces had different expectations surrounding this, but I think it is unhealthy to be constantly on. Like you see, Aussie corporate always shares like the please fix photos of people out at the pub on their laptop fixing something. I mean, that's shit. That's how you achieve burnout. But unfortunately, in some places, that's the normal. And sometimes you have to adapt to the normal, and you have to figure out how you get around that. And usually in those Aussie corporate environments, it's consuming large amounts of alcohol consistently over a weekend to forget the fact that you hate everything about the place that you work at. But you did it because it has a cool bit of swag or, merch that you get every year for winter, like a cool puffer vest or something, right? But that's exactly, especially when the UK and Europe with TeamGate and 5CRM, this was like a big thing because you feel like, what if I'm not there and someone needs me? What if I'm not there and a big customer's churning and it's going to tank our revenue? What does that do? And sometimes you just need to get comfortable in the unknown. And the one thing that I found is like the biggest problem with internationally how we operate is that, man, some days you just wake up to bad news, and it sucks the first thing in the morning when you wake up to an email that was sent 3 hours ago from someone that just like absolutely ruins your day. And it's like, man, it's 4 a.m. and that sucks. But at the end of the day, you being awake 3 hours earlier or getting notified about it, 6 hours, is it going to change the outcome? It's probably not going to change the outcome at all. So having yourself like always available is potentially, it's doing more harm than good to you because you're less effective in the hours than you should be.
Definitely. And there's no mental switch off. Like, you need that mental switch off, and you won't know yourself when you actually effectively completely switch off from work after work hours, which, we never used to do. We definitely didn't really do it in the military because we'd always you'd be on call as a duty officer, or you generally after hours there's some sort of event you got to go to, or, you got things coming up. And then that sort of
But one thing I feel like defense does really well is that it's probably worse now, but there wasn't a large proliferation of dreams. And so you had to be at work to do work because of like the close environment. You had to be at work to do work, which, there was after hour functions, so there's stuff that happened, occasional duty officers and things like that. But in the grand scheme of things, like, you had to be at work to do work. And one thing that I always look back on is working in the ops cell in A12. There was, ops cells are horrendous beasts for there constantly being more work. You could do more. You could always have more of an impact and help people out and things like that. But Benny Gray was really good at this, where he'd go home and work on dreams. And I know he did, because I'd go home and work on dreams and he'd be online too. But the simple fact of the matter is that there was other people in that office as well. Like, there was a bombardier, there was a gunner, there was, some civilian staff and things like that as well. There was a travel clerk that was in there. And if we all were staying past 4 o'clock, they would just stay because they didn't really have anything to do.
It's like association.
But they'd just stay. They'd just stay because they felt bad about leaving early or something like that. So Benny used to, he'd pack up 4 o'clock, 4:05. He'd have his backpack on his back. He'd go around to people's desks and go, "What are you doing?" And he'd be like, "Oh, I'm doing this." And he's like, "Oh, not anymore." And he'd just unplug your screen and be like, "See you later." And you're like, "Oh, I've actually just got to save that. Do you mind if I do that?" And he's like, "Sure, save it." But the point was made. The expectation was you go home, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the key point that he got across there, is that expectation was you go home. So I think it goes into what you said there about setting those boundaries for yourself to set the example for your employees, right? Like, if you're online at all hours and around the clock, then they're probably going to be doing the same.
Yeah, and it just comes back to leadership, right? And those types of leaders, and you and I both know Benny, and he's one of the best leaders. And then you see other leaders, which, at 4Edge, I knew a BC that had specifically a meeting for officers at 4:30 p.m. when everybody else knocked off at 3:45. And then he'd give out tasks. And then he'd give out tasks at 4:30 to the officers, so they'd be there till 6 p.m. So, it just comes back to leadership and what that looks like. And
but that's a learned behavior is the other part as well. Is it
he would have been treated that way,
and he's like,
he would have been treated that way,
idea.
And now he's doing it. And I don't think he didn't really want to go home, so he was going to be at work anyway. So it's shit house when it's there. The next point is blurred boundaries between work and personal life, especially for business owners. I haven't really experienced this one too much. Obviously, I'm a CEO. I'm not a business owner. But do you have any talking points on this one, Abe?
To me, this is a big thing about the ability to disconnect. And sometimes you can just be you need to have that breaking point where you clear delineation between work mode and personal mode. And so, for small business owners, when you're a founder, operator of your own business, it's really hard to do this because it's constantly on.
Especially if you're an owner with your partner, or you're coming home, you're still talking about business, you're talking about work.
But that's where it becomes, I think, even more important, right? And so you need to have that clear breaking point, and depending on what it is. And so for me, what I really focus on is I have a activity that I do when I finish work that sets that's the delineation, right? And for me, it's going to the gym. And yes, I enjoy the gym, but for me, it's more therapy than anything else. And that's where you need to find, this is where I talk about recharging your batteries. When I go to the gym, I actually feel better mentally, more energetic, and I've had that clear break from work. The days that I come back from the gym and come back into the office and get on the computer, it just fucking destroys me.
Yeah.
Like if I do it in the, let's just say I come back in the afternoon, I come out, check Slack, check some emails, do some work. Like I'm back connected.
Yeah,
I'm connected now, though.
flat.
That's the problem. I'm back connected. And so I haven't had that breaking point. So I can't engage properly and do the things that are going to recharge my battery. And so this is the problem where you have pressure to always be available with Slack on your phone, things like that. But if you don't have that clear breaking point in when you finish work to going and doing your personal life, you're going to have a lot of issues. You know, you probably, if you're having a shit time and you're going to be irritable, if you're excited about something and there's plenty of work to be done, you're going to be thinking about that instead of what you need to do with your family. If you're under pressure, you're going to carry that pressure into your relationships. So, you know, if you're, you know, dating, if you've got kids, you got a wife, like all that kind of stuff, you know, all three at the same time, whatever the case may be. But you're going to have issues, right? So some different ways that I do it is I like to make a list or at least check off my tasks in the afternoon before I leave. So I'll be like, okay, cool. Tomorrow I have to do X, Y, and Z, block out my calendar so I know what's on the table for tomorrow. Because what that does is it allows you to then say, oh, I've got it planned. And you feel good about what's coming next. And then have a breaking activity. So obviously I can't go to the gym every day. I have you know, if it's, let's just say like a Wednesday when I don't go to the gym, I'll go for an extended walk, right? So I'll go for a long walk for like an hour, or I'll go for a run or something like that. That doesn't happen usually. But usually it's a walk, right? So go for a long walk on Wednesday, out in the sun, get the dopamine, and then walk up to school and get the kids. And then that's the breaking point. And then you're back, like you're in your personal life. You just got to figure out what suits you.
Yeah.
If you're, you know, if you don't like exercise, you don't want to do physical activity, you're an idiot, but also whatever. If, you know, playing a PlayStation or something like that is for you, have that breaking point. Play half an hour of PlayStation, go pick up the kids and do what you need to do. Or, you know, just have that, especially with like working from home, super important because it's always there.
But even if it's as simple as that checklist, like you said, the prioritizing for the next day, if you go through, clear out your emails, set your priorities for the next day, shut the laptop, that's your breaking point. You've already prioritized the next day. And it's funny, yesterday I was at a point where I'd worked all day. It was the busiest day I've ever done. And it got to a point where I knew my mother-in-law was over looking after my son because he was sick. I knew it was getting to the point where she needed to leave. So I needed that breaking point. But I had this integration that I had to build out for a customer. And I sort of took a step back and thought, do I need to do this afternoon? Can it wait till tomorrow? And that's where I had the realization, this customer's Australian. They're not going to be online till 9 a.m. I start work at 4. I've got a 5-hour block in the morning. Let's set the priority first thing in the morning to build out this integration. I've got plenty of time. And as soon as I knew that priority was sorted, there's a plan in place. The priority is not actually for today. It's for tomorrow morning. That's the break. Shut the computer and go be with your family. So I think that's a massive one that a lot of people don't do, is sort of finish up their workday by prioritizing the next day. And obviously if you wake up and you've got emails there that are higher priority, you can reprioritize in the morning. But I really like the closing off of getting your emails sorted, managed, set your priorities in the calendar for the next day or for the rest of the week, and then disconnect. You know, my physical disconnect, I would say, is probably picking up the kids from school. That's my last safe moment. You know, I'm not working after that point when I go and pick up my son from school. Before that, you know, the trigger is probably the, you know, summarizing, finishing your emails, setting your priorities, shut the laptop, go and have a feed, and then probably for me, not go to the gym, laze about, and then go pick up my kid from school.
But so, you had a period of time there where you're into golf.
Yeah. So at the moment, playing footy. So that's sort of the priority. But yeah, obviously when that finishes, going back to whether it's surfing, whether it's golf, whether it's going for that walk or the jog or whatever it is, having that disconnect. But for me, it's generally eating, because I don't usually eat through my work days. So it's going downstairs, making lunch, and then getting ready for prepping dinner and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've harped on it enough. It's just having that break. But people who don't work from home, one thing that was for them is catching the train is often the breaking point, and it's the routine that you can't get around, right? You catch the train home, and that's your decompression time. You listen to a podcast, whatever, and then you get home, and it's like, sweet, personal life.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. Yeah. The next one here is sort of covered a little bit, but man, it's tough. Like if you're a business owner and there's financial pressure about, business viability, how things are going, it becomes like really, really challenging to be able to disconnect. And you feel like that the best thing that I need to do right now is like just work, 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 and work. And there might be times where that may be the case, but often you just end up in this stagnation. So you'll end up being less effective, not achieving the goals you want to, because you're stuck in this rut around like just churning the wheels but getting nowhere.
Yeah, and I think like the financial pressures, the emotional pressures, that they're always going to be there, regardless of what your work-life balance looks like. I would tell people to just at least try it out, because if there's no boundaries set for your work and your personal life, thinking about it from like a silly perspective, you think you've got 24 hours in the day to get things done. If you set those clear boundaries, you've got 8 hours or whatever the workday is, you actually are more productive. Well, I definitely am. If I know that I've got a 4-hour block before I need to take my son to school, I'm going pretty hard for those 4 hours. If I know that after that I've got another 4-hour block and then I'm switching off, I know that I've got my priorities there. I need to get done in the next 4 hours. So I'm actually working and being a lot more productive. If I think if I don't get it all done, I can jump on tonight and then I can work for a couple of hours, you become less productive. So set the boundaries, try it out. You're going to still have those emotional and financial pressures regardless of what you do. So I would say try to focus it down, become more productive. At the end of the day, I think it's a quote by Marilyn Monroe. You can't cuddle up to a career at night. Like your kids aren't going to remember, in a couple of years that you worked, all these extra hours to overcome those financial pressures. Like be around your family. At the end of the day, that's probably what's going to matter most. And coming back to Abe's point, speaking about the gym and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is prioritize that kind of self-care, whether it's your mental health, whether it's your physical health. So whether it's exercising, whether it's just having that break, that should also be just as important as the emotional and financial pressures of your career.
Yeah, and I think that's super important when you think about the type of person you want to be for your partner, for your kids, the type of person that you want to project if you're out there trying to find a partner. Like all that self-care that you take into place is super important. And too many people fall into this rut where they prioritize everyone else over themselves and end up in such a situation that they then can't provide what other people need. And that's, they're not physically active. They then, start to get depression, things like that. They can't be as active. Kids want to go play soccer, or football. They're not able to effectively, involve in that rough and tumble and play with their kids. Partner wants to go on a hike. They're not able to. Things like that, right? Where you need to sometimes set that priority on yourself. And I think the best way to do this is small business is tough, but building out a team around you that you can trust, that are going to do the right thing and give you the ability to delegate things to, I think is super important. Because if you're in a team, there's a rule. If you are not looking forward to meeting with someone, then you should fire them because it's not working. Because if you're not looking forward to them, it means like, this is going to be a tough conversation because they probably haven't done the job that I've asked them to do. This is going to suck. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be like, oh, great work, well done. It's going to be like, why haven't you done this? This isn't up to standard. Just fire them because it's not working. And you can't trust that person because they're not competent at doing what you need them to do. So that's a really key part. Like if you don't enjoy, your weekly catch-ups with someone, they're probably not doing the right thing. That's really a big part of it. But being able to build a team that you can trust is super important to that.
Yeah, and it empowers them, right? If you can delegate that to them, like we come back to it again, like when I was first working for you as a director of operations, there was things that I just didn't know. I hadn't learnt yet. And you were just like, see ya.
I used to hate
I'm
meeting
going
with
away
you.
for 2 weeks. And I'm just like, fuck. Like, but you knew that I'd be fine. Like, you knew I'd be fine, and you went and disconnected, and that was that. But that never, I probably wouldn't have grown to that next level if that never happened. And I think leaders have this responsibility, and especially if you're a business owner, it's like, I need to do everything. I need to do everything. But you don't. If you hire the right people, you should be able to delegate, and you should be able to take that, that trust and put it on them. And, Team Gate's got a team in the US and America. I trust Avidus, who runs my European team, to deal with, some of our biggest customers are all in Europe. If they've got concerns, their first point of contact should be Avidus. It shouldn't be me. He's in their time zone, and he has been, trusted to manage that. So, until he breaks that trust, that's on him, and that's where that delegation comes in. And I shouldn't need to be getting on my phone at 1 a.m. because I've got that plan in place and that employee in place to deal with that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's that's a really big part of it, right? Is it allows you to disconnect a lot more.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about, we sort of round the edges here, but let's talk about, and I think the best way to go through this is that having a personal hobby or doing something for yourself personally or for your family is really important for people in leadership, high pressure roles, things like that. So I think what'd be really good is I've sort of talked about a little bit about gym, but what do you do to charge your battery? So this is really focused on the importance of having something outside of work that charges your battery instead of just being constantly, work, sleep, eat, that's it. What do you do to prioritize you and recharge your batteries?
Yeah, I think
you don't have to tell people about your facials. That's okay.
The big thing for me is just getting outside with the kids, because I know that it recharges their batteries as well, right? Having the break, but then knowing that, when 3:30 comes and I'm picking up my kids from school, we live in, somewhere I always dreamed of as a kid to live in. We live in the Sunshine Coast. We live in this, tourist destination. We'd be stupid if we didn't take advantage of it. So, during summer, we're at the beach every afternoon. So going and doing that and having that complete disconnect, the focus is just about family, is massive for me. And then obviously on a personal side, not forgetting about the family, but going and being active in some way. So whether it's going for a surf, whether it's going to play golf, obviously before I screwed my back, it was getting to the gym. But just having that, I'm also really introverted. So having that activity time by myself is also a really big way for me to recharge my batteries. So knowing what's what. So, if I'm finishing work at lunchtime or 1 p.m., I've got that couple of hours before I pick up the kids from school. That initial focus is on myself. So, whether it's going for a walk and listen to a podcast, getting to the gym, going and playing sport, going for a surf. And then, from 3:30, that focus then switches to, all right, now I'm in dad mode. Let's go and do something with the kids. Let's go and go to the beach or go to a park, or, they ride their bikes, go for a walk with them and ride their bikes. So I think something really important to do is kind of off topic, but I did it recently for university. It was like a values assessment. And if you had Andrew do the values assessment 5 years ago when I was a married man with no kids, completely different, right? It would be about professional development. It would be about career progression. I recently did it and it was not alarming, but it was just so funny to see how different it was. And it was all around, whilst there was some career stuff in there, the career stuff was about like financial security for my family. It was about, all these family values were now at the top of the list rather than the career progression and things
it's
like that.
It's funny, isn't it? And I think it's important to do that through different stages of your life, because it's a nice wake-up call. Because you sit there and you think about, you have this idea about who you are as a person. And when you're young, single, it's very individual focused.
Get ahead.
Where am I going to be? What am I doing? Yeah. Set yourself up. And then when you have a partner, it sort of becomes like, oh, we're going to do this. We're focused on this. We're going to grow as a team. And then when you have a family, it suddenly changes from we or I and we to they. They need to have security. They need to have a 100%. Nice place to live. They need to. That's what it's all about when you get to that stage.
Yeah. And so I recommend everyone go and do that, because Then when you come back to, oh, I'm really stressed about work, and you work out why those stresses are in place, and you start to think, oh, I've got the emotional and the financial stresses of work. You look at that values assessment and it's like, oh, my values are actually my kids, my family. Let's set this boundary and let's go and spend time with what I value most, because we forget about it, right? When you're in the grind of it and you're getting smashed at work, you're focused, you got tunnel vision about what the next 8 hours looks like. So set those boundaries, understand your values. If you've got kids, obviously those values might be different. If you're a single person or you're running a business with your partner and you don't have kids, those values may be different, but it's still important to understand the values and then set those boundaries to make sure that you're fueling yourself as an individual, as a, understanding what your partner's values are. So like if he or she really, values time together, make sure you set those boundaries to spend time together, to have a date night once a week or whatever it is. So, kind of got off topic there, but I think all valuable points.
No, I think that's good. And for me, I've already talked about it. Gym is massive for me in recharging batteries, but like Andrew, doing things with the kids is a big priority for me, and giving them the opportunity to do things. And for instance, Friday afternoons, I go down, pick them up from school, and then we go sit at a cafe that's on the way back from school, and we'll sit there and talk about the week, have a laugh. They'll have a bit of a play outside, and they'll have a milkshake or whatever. And that's their kick off to the weekend, right? That's them being able to disconnect from school and their kick off to the weekend. But being able to, it's really funny, right? We talked about introverts and extroverts and how there's like extroverted introverts. I put myself in like the extroverted introvert, where I charge my batteries by not being around people, but I still will go out and exert my energy with other people, right? And so it's really funny because I consider charging my batteries and being introverted is actually just like being the family unit. So with the kids, with the wife, doing things together, I consider that to be introverted in a way. And then extrovert is going out, and kids will have friends that they want to play with, my friends, things like that, going out and seeing them. But I think charging that battery wise is spending quality time. Like, I can't remember the last time I actually sat down and watched a TV series, watched a movie or something like that. That wasn't like the kids, sitting down with the kids at like 6 p.m. and watching a movie and putting them to bed at 7:30, then heading to bed at 8 o'clock myself. But like, that's just the priority that I place on it. It isn't staying up to midnight watching a TV show or whatever. It's now like, well, I want to make sure I get a good night's sleep so I can be up early with the kids and we can go down to the park. We can go and, do things. And you see, like, you're at the park at like 7 a.m. The kids have had breakfast and everyone's dressed and no one else is there. And it's great. And it's like, because people are prioritizing, like their kids are awake. I have no doubt of that. Their kids are awake, but they're just sitting at the house because mum and dad are, either hungover or lazing about. It's just the different priorities, right? But I think it's, it's important to just figure out what energizes you. So don't use that as a standard. It's just, if energizing you is sitting on the couch reading a book, then by all means go ahead and do it. You just got to figure out what's going to give you the best outcome for you, and depending on where your value drivers are, your family, your partner, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the quote I had, like, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, right? You're not going to find more time. You have to make the time to prioritize those values. And that's exactly what it should be. It should be a priority of your values. Work, at the end of the day, for me, work fuels the values that I put on my family, like providing security. That it's just a tool to provide that security and give my family what they sort of need. Everything outside of that should be around those other values of spending time with them and things like that. And for my wife and I at the moment, we sort of know, work hours, between work hours and bed is obviously family time. Realistically, at the moment, my wife and I get about an hour a day together before we're asleep. The kids go to bed at about 7. We're in bed by 8. So yes, we don't watch as much TV like you said, Abe, but we try to watch one episode of a TV series a night together. That's sort of our time together.
But that's how you recharge together. That's how you
value. Connect. And
right?
At the same time, we know it's temporary. We've got 2 kids. We've got a 3-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old. Like, we know that in a couple of years, we're going to have more time together and we'll get through that. So if there's
Like
anyone out there that,
my brother, for instance, he recharged his batteries by giving back, by doing charitable work, right? So he doesn't have any kids. Him and his wife, they do a lot for charity. And so his idea of like recharging his batteries is going to run like a charity event or going to help out with things. So I think that's like once again, you just need to realize where you need to be in getting that. But I guess the next part onto this is like, well, okay, it's all well and good. Why do I have to do this? For us, when I think about all the people who I've seen who I would consider to be like not as effective as they could be, or to reach that burnout point, it's they've tried to sprint too hard and do too many things at once. Is one area. The second area is they stick around because they feel like they should stick around. So they'll be online for, say online or in the office or whatever for 18 hours a day, doing very ineffectual work because they're there for too long and their brains are completely fried, right? And then the other side is that people have no or ineffective ways of recharging. Going out and getting on the nose beers every weekend is not a way to recharge your batteries. Those are the sort of people who are like, man, I need 2 days off. I need to recover. They're going to take Monday, Tuesday off. And it's like you do nothing. You just sit there and eat ice cream in your undies. But you feel like you need to recover because, you're not treating yourself right. So the long-term benefits of maintaining and having these recharging moments and being able to do that is that you maintain that passion towards what you're doing and the efficiency, really. This is where the whole 4-day work week where employers are trying it is they're like, well, are people going to work harder in those 4 days? Probably. Some will, some won't. Some will just treat themselves like shit for the 3 days they're off instead of 2 and come back worse off. But some will, those who have effective recharge patterns. But the big thing there is that you need to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position to fulfill the value-driving needs that you have. So whether that value be your professional development, career progression, doing that allows you to continue on that. If it's looking after your kids or spending quality time with your kids or your partner, then getting those recharge habits does well.
Yeah, and I hate to come back to gym because you always talk about the gym and I don't want to put people off.
Finally, someone else talking about it.
It's almost like a diet, right? Like if you are super strict Monday to Saturday, you just eat broccoli and chicken, and then on your cheat day on Sunday, you're fucking smashing 3 buckets of KFC. Like, is that more effective?
Ingesting 20,000 calories to make up for the
is that more
the 10,000 that you lost?
If you like a Mars bar, have a Mars bar every day, but reduce your calories throughout the day in your other meals so that you've got a balance. And then it's like you're not on a diet, right? You're just eating good food throughout, like every day. You don't really need that cheat day because it's more sustainable in the long run, right? So it's the same sort of thing with recharging batteries. If you can put little things in place each day that help you break the monotony and switch your focus from work to family life, you're not going to need those big blocks of I need 3 weeks off because I'm absolutely burnt out. So just something to consider as you move forward is it's like habits. You start small and put it into your routine and it's going to work longer term.
Yeah. And if you're a leader, doing this sort of stuff and having that work-life balance creates a much better work culture than any other sort of benefit could give you. And I think that's a really key part is that, people talk about salary, benefits, things like that. I think the culture in the workforce is changing where people are willing to take less of a salary for a better work environment. And I think 100%. that's a really big part that you need to consider is that, you look at some of the people that we've hired who probably could earn a lot more in certain other jobs, in certain other industries, but they come to us because you're able to, you respect boundaries, you give people the chance to recharge and they have a work-life balance where they can still do things they enjoy and come to work and work hard during that period that they work, but know that boundaries are going to be respected and, their right to disconnect is maintained. And it's going to be really funny. I think that soon this whole right to disconnect thing is it could become like a hiring path, right?
Yeah, definitely. And leaders probably don't understand the influence they have of their employees. Like when I first started,
leaders.
Yeah, bad leaders and good leaders as well. But when I first started at Xenon and I was a director of operations and you were the GM, like there'd be days where I'd be messaging you and you're just not responding between certain hours. And I'm like, what is going on? And I check your calendar and it's like school drop off. Okay, he's out for the next hour for school drop off. And it got to a point where you were like, block out your calendar. Like you need to do that shit. Like put that into your routine. And that's where I did it. So if you're doing it as a leader, it's going to encourage your employees to do it as well. And at the end of the day, they're going to want to work for you because they've got those little breaks and they're going to be more effective and they're going to be more productive because they've got those focus hours where they know they need to be smashing out work.
I will caveat that with
don't take the piss.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much exactly it, right? Like we work some pretty obscure hours on a call with someone yesterday and she's like, oh, what time is it? And I was like, 6 a.m. He's like, oh, wow, you're committed. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, 6 a.m. Like, you're really committed. And it's like, oh, man, I've been at work for 2 hours at that stage. I was like, not to mention I had a call that I finished up at 9 p.m. last night. And so it just, and that's where, if you consider like work-life balance is I only work 9 to 5, anywhere out of 9 to 5 is, that's not work-life balance. And it's like, no, that's not what it means. And so that's where I say, like, working those obscure hours and knowing that you're hardworking and that you're going to put the effort in, you're doing all you can, allows you to say, like, hey, I want to do school drop-off. Great. You can do school drop-off because your like total work output is far more. Whereas if you say you can't do school drop-off and it's like, oh, well, why am I doing this call at 9 p.m.? You start to ask yourself those questions, right? Like if you're allowed flexibility in some areas, you give flexibility in others. And so that comes into don't take the piss. If you're like, I only work 9 to 5 and it's like, great, I want to drop my kids off to school. Yeah, I want to drop my kids off to school at 9:30. Yeah, or I want to go to gym at lunch for 2 hours. And it's like, well, no, because you only work 9 to 5. And they're like, but so-and-so gets that flexibility. And it's like, yeah, because they're here at 6 and, yes, they're gone by 4, but overall their net output is more than what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you got to give to get, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a balance there. And there's also a balance as the employee. Don't take the piss. Obviously, if your leader is going to give you the rope, it's And
that's like if someone says like, someone, I've got a doctor's appointment after lunch. Can I go to that? I probably won't be back for the day. It's like, yeah, sweet. Because you know that there's other times where they put in an extra half day to get a deadline complete. And you accept that because you know as a leader, like you've set the example of working hard, but providing flexibility as well.
What do you want to go after this, mate? There's a few things there.
I feel like we've covered a whole heap that we talked about. So maybe let's just wrap it up and give our 3 key points that come out of this. And so I think the first one, chipping away at work-life balance is the key to achieving a good work-life balance. You need to figure out your own values and priorities for what recharges your batteries. And if you want long-term success and happiness, you need to focus on achieving that balance and recharging your batteries. Those are my 3 key takeaways that I just want everyone to take with them. And when I look at that, you chip away at it, it doesn't become a big task. And so as Andrew said, spending a little time every day doing the right things, recharging your batteries is going to result in a net positive. Doing the values and understanding what you prioritize will help you to understand where you recharge your batteries and make the time to go and do those things. So have a discussion. Like if you're in a 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job and you get home and it's dinner time, kids time, like have that discussion with your partner about, I put it in the reference of having a family because when you're an individual or you're in a relationship with no kids, I mean, life is exponentially more simpler, right? We've both been on both sides of the spectrum here. And it's like, man, before I had kids, like I could just go to the gym whenever I wanted to. It didn't matter. But before I met Geordie, it's like I could do whatever I wanted. It didn't matter. Nothing, like time was not an issue. I could do things when I wanted to. But, if you're in that family environment, sit down and have that conversation and say, hey, I need the gym for my mental health. I need to go for an hour and a half, 4 times a week. When can we make that happen? And just have that discussion. It's like, great, I need to get up earlier and do it. I'll get up early and do it. I need to go at night after the kids go to bed. Great, I'll do that. but figure out where it's going to be and just work that out. And then you've never met someone more unhappy in a job than when they don't prioritize themselves at certain times. And what you'll find is that person will never be happy in any job. That person that constantly whinges and complains, like, oh, I work too hard. Hey, I don't get enough time to myself. And you look at them and it's like, okay, well, show me, do a calendar audit of where you spend your time during the day. And they're like, oh, okay, I start work at 9. Oh, well, what happens before work? Oh, I wake up at 8. I don't have time for breakfast. I just have to shower, get changed, and, drive or get in the car, get in the train and head to work. Okay. Start work at 9. All right, cool. And then I work till 5. And then what do you do after 5? Oh, I just go home. So I think it's, I go home. What do you do when you get home? Not much. I'm not really sure what to do. Turns out you scroll Instagram for 4 hours. And then you decide that it's time for dinner. You go out and get dinner, and then you come back and go to bed and scroll Instagram for another 5. So I think that sort of person will never be happy in any organization. So making sure that you do a time audit and figure out where you can better off spend that time. You talk about it a lot with like diets. You do like a calorie audit for a week. You track what you're eating down to the 9th degree and go, holy shit, I'm actually eating a whole heap of calories, like empty calories, like a lolly here, chocolate here. And it turns out to be a lot. But if you do the same with a time audit, it's like, and Apple, I don't know about Android because I don't have one, but Apple's really good where it does have that ability to look at screen time and where you spend your screen time. So that's a good place to start. And you realize, like, man, last week I spent like a whole day on Instagram, 24 hours on Instagram. Holy shit. Like, that's a whole day on Instagram last week. And is that really where I want to be spending my time?
Yeah, exactly. Before we wrap up, I'll do 3 points as well, but it's more so just some key strategies from what we've spoken about today. I think the big one is using time blocks. So using your calendar effectively. So, blocking out time for, even if it's your habits, going to the gym, put it in your calendar so that time is blocked out, and you're going to get a reminder every day on your phone that says, hey, you've blocked this time out to go for a run or go to the gym or, recharge those batteries. Doing your daily wrap up and setting your priorities for whether it's the next day or the rest of the week is a really good way to sort of close off your work day and switch off. And then the final one is your environment's key. If you've got all your work apps on your phone and you're constantly getting pinged after work hours, you're not going to switch off. So turn them off, put some sort of bat phone in place or some sort of emergency communication line in place, and just try it out and see. I guarantee your business won't burn down overnight if you delete your Slack off your phone or something like that. So set the environment up for success and you'll be able to set those boundaries a lot easier.
Sweet. All right. That wraps up our podcast on how to avoid burnout. As Andrew said, try some of these strategies just to see if it works. I think time blocks, calendar for me is like probably the biggest thing because it allows you to achieve structure so much better. But make sure you time block every Tuesday at 10 a.m. to listen to the Beers and Business podcast.
There you go. There's your first challenge.
First challenge, time block that. Make sure that's ready to go. Like and subscribe on all of our socials at Beers and Business Pod, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn. Check us out. Episodes go live Tuesdays, 10 a.m. on Spotify, YouTube, and also on Apple Podcasts. So get around that. Submit any questions, topics, guests that you want to see on. If you want to be a guest on the podcast as well, hit us up. Gladly have you on and talk about anything that you want to talk about, small business, stuff like that. Happy to have a good discussion. And tune into the next episode. Tuesday, 10 a.m.
See you then.
Cheers, everyone.